I'm Tavis Nasir, and this is Leadership Biz Cafe, a podcast that provides insights and tools to help leaders take on the challenges and opportunities found in leading today's workplaces. Leadership Biz Cafe is brought to you by Tavis Nasir Leadership, our leadership firm that offers keynotes and corporate workshops in both in-person and virtual settings that will help you to improve the way you lead and guide your organization's growth and future successes. To find out how we can help you today with your leadership challenges and discover your untapped opportunities, visit our website at tavisnasir.com. And while you're there, don't forget to check out my award-winning, internationally acclaimed leadership blog as well. And now, let's start up the espresso machine and brew up another leadership espresso shot. Recently, I facilitated a workshop as part of a leadership summit for a healthcare provider, and one of the areas I covered was how we can become better listeners. In that section of the workshop, I shared the advice that one thing we need to work on is to quiet that inner voice we all have that could take our attention away from the conversation we're having. This is something we can all relate to, where as someone is describing a situation or problem, our inner voice starts reminding us of an email we have to write, or of an upcoming meeting and what we need to make sure gets addressed. And when this happens, our focus is shifted away from the person speaking to us to that inner conversation happening in our brain. Of course, there's another troublesome element to this inner voice that we need to work on if we're going to excel in our ability to bring out the best in those we lead, and that is learning how to put a stop to our negative self-talk. Throughout our lives, we receive all sorts of criticism, some of it valid, and some of it that's simply meant to put us down. And yet, for many of us, the critic that has the biggest impact on how we view our abilities and what we can accomplish is not external. Instead, it's found within us in that inner negative voice that makes us doubt ourselves and our ability to take on new challenges and opportunities to succeed and grow. Consider, for example, the following comments. This isn't going to work. I don't think my colleagues will support my idea. I could never do what they do. I don't know what everyone expects me to do. On the surface, these comments seem fairly harmless, which is probably why many of us have said it to ourselves at one time or another, or even out loud to a colleague or friend. However, the problem is that such comments can not only have a negative impact on how we see ourselves, but also in how we present our abilities to others. To help put this into sharper focus, I want you to think about your favorite athlete or musician. I want you to imagine standing next to your favorite athlete before they run out onto the field before a major game. Or if it's your favorite musician, standing off stage with them before they go to start their set before thousands of screaming and chanting fans. What do you think is going on in their minds in that moment? Do you think they're listening to negative self-talk telling them how they'll mess up? Or are they hearing another voice, one that encourages them to focus on all the practice and effort they've made to get to this point so they can deliver a performance that will delight their fans? In my numerous conversations with successful leaders, it's this same kind of mindset I hear in their words and see in their actions. When they attain the goal they set out to reach, their response is not one of boasting or grandstanding over the accomplishment. Instead, they see it as a given outcome for the efforts they helped their organization to attain. And when things don't go the way they expected it to, there's no put-downs or dismissive remarks that they were being too ambitious or overextending themselves. Rather, the focus is more about trying to figure out what went wrong and what can they do differently that will solve the problem and help them get back on course. In each of these cases, what influences how these successful people and leaders view themselves is a deep-seated sense of purpose about what they're trying to accomplish and why. As such, they had no choice but to put a stop to their negative self-talk because that inner voice was preventing them from doing what matters most to them. And by learning to put a stop to their negative self-talk, they also served as an example to those around them to believe in their own abilities and nurture their own inner voice that would compel them to push ahead, to get up when they fall down, and believe in their collective abilities as a team to achieve their shared goals. So, how can we be more like these successful leaders and put a stop to our negative self talk about our leadership and our ability to empower the best in those we lead? Well, coming off this recent leadership workshop I facilitated, I'd like to share 4 simple but effective strategies you can put into practice right now to help master your inner voice so it's no longer a source of negativity and self-doubt, and instead becomes an inner source of encouragement and strength that will help you be the leader your employees need you to be. The first step to put a stop to negative self-talk is to become more aware of when you engage in negative self-talk. As with any change in behavior, the first thing you need to do is become more aware of when you're doing it. In the case of your inner voice, you need to become more conscious of when you start saying these negative things about your abilities, regardless of whether it's to yourself or to others. Pay attention to what are the visual or verbal cues you encounter that trigger this response, so that way you can anticipate this negative voice echoing in your mind's eye. And now that we're trying to become more aware of what cues lead to negative self-talk, we need to replace this behavior with another more beneficial one. And this leads us to the second step to putting a stop to negative self-talk, where we replace our I can't feeling with I can. Now, it's important to note here that what's driving us to say I can't is our fear of failure. It's our fear of failure that causes us to take a step back while others take a step forward, ready to roll up their sleeves to figure out how to tackle the task at hand. And to be clear here, this is about more than speaking I can like some words of affirmation. The fact is, when we say I can't, what we're doing is essentially shutting down our innate creativity and our ability to think of what resources or people we know who could help us to complete this task. By saying I can't, we convince ourselves the problem is insurmountable, and as such, why should we bother thinking up possible solutions to resolve it? Shifting from I can't to I can is an empowering act that allows us to not only silence this negative self-talk, but to foster an environment of collaboration that encourages creativity and innovative thinking driven by what-if thinking. The third step to putting a stop to negative self-talk is to not let your past determine your future behavior. While past events can offer us insights into why we didn't succeed at a particular task or role, what we often get wrong is assuming that it's also a good indicator of what will go wrong either in the present or in the future. Although there's nothing we can do to right any mistakes made in the past, we still have the opportunity to ensure that the present and future will turn out differently from what we previously experienced. And a good place to start is to review why things didn't go well in the past and use those lessons in the present to make sure it doesn't happen again. Of course, a lot of people like to talk about how failure is a good thing. And it is, provided that we're putting in place both the space and measures that will ensure we're both willing and able to learn from those mistakes, to allow it to make concrete changes to how we do things, as opposed to the current notion of failing fast, which leads to more of a fix-it-and-forget-it mindset. And finally, the fourth step is something that mirrors what I shared with these healthcare leaders in my recent leadership workshop, and that is time and perseverance are key to making this change stick. As with creating any new habit, it's going to take a good amount of time and effort to change your inner voice, and with it, how you communicate and interact with others. And there's no question that it's not going to be easy, and at times, that old inner negative voice will rear its ugly head, telling you that this isn't going to work, and encouraging you to doubt your real potential and ability to grow. And yet, if we look at any example of individuals who represent models of personal or professional success, you'll find one trait that they share in common. They persevered despite the setbacks they faced because they believed in the end outcome. As much as athletes need to train hard if they want to be the best in their sport, being able to retrain our inner voice to focus on where we can go and on what we can accomplish is hard work, that requires a firm commitment on our part to see it through. The fact is that inner voice that resides in all of us plays a critical role to our successes, both now and in the future. As such, it becomes all the more important that we put a stop to negative self-talk so that our inner voice becomes a source of encouragement about our ability to succeed, instead of holding us back out of fear that we might repeat the mistakes of our past. As I mentioned earlier, this Leadership Espresso shot was inspired from ideas that came to my mind following a recent leadership workshop I gave. And if hearing these insights has your inner voice thinking, hey, I think we should look into hiring Tanver to speak at our organization, well, I'd like to invite you to reach out and connect with me so we can talk more about it. Just go to my website at tanvernasir.com and fill out the contact form so we can start that conversation. You can also find on my website my speaking and workshop pages where you can learn more about the topics I can speak about in a keynote or workshop, as well as see what other leaders who've attended my sessions have had to say about hearing me speak. And before I wrap things up, if you enjoyed this or other episodes of my podcast, I'd be grateful if you could take a moment here to rate and review my podcast on your favorite streaming platform to help support this show. I'm Tanver Nasir, and you've been listening to Leadership Biz Cafe.